Because a lot of the times, like the goals that we set are because of a feeling that we want. If you want to have a bunch of passive income, like you want that freedom that comes with it. You want the happiness that comes with like not having to work all the time and be with your family.
If you're watching this on YouTube, make sure you smash that like button and click subscribe. For those of you listening on a podcast platform, be sure to subscribe on whatever platform that is and leave us a rating if you can. The more likes, ratings, and subscriptions that we get, the more we can spread the message and grow our community. So we also have a free Facebook group. It's called the Average Joe Finances Network. Check us out, join the group, join the community, ask questions, and become a part of the team. All of our other social media accounts are listed in our flow page, and we have them in the video or podcast description below. Hey, how's it going, everybody? So today's guest is Nathan Bynum. And Nathan, at the age of 25, has already become a best-selling author, a certified goal success coach, and is now teaching his audience of entrepreneurs how to systematically achieve their business goals by honing on a niche at the intersection of their passions and profits, showing them how to create websites in less than 2 hours from scratch without touching a single line of code, and attracting their ideal clients. So he likes to travel the world, meet successful entrepreneurs, and that's given him the insights and skills needed to become one of the youngest goal achievers you'll ever meet or hear from. Hey, Nathan, really excited to have you on the show. Thanks for joining me today.
Thanks for having me. Excited to be here.
Yeah, absolutely, man. I gave like a little bit of a wave top of who you are and what you're doing. But I always like to start the show off with knowing a little bit more about you, and just so my audience can know who you are a little bit more deeply. So if you could share a little bit more about yourself, share your story. How did this all get started for you?
Yeah, so my entrepreneurial journey started when I was 6 years old. And that's when like the mindset was definitely there. My family and I just moved over to Hungary, and I downloaded like a widget on the desktop to where it showed the exchange rates from like Hungarian forints to Czech crowns to US dollars. And so I would watch that and I would think, man, if I had traded $5 for this many Hungarian forints and then a week later then I traded it back, then I would have made some money. And which like making any money at that age, I was thinking like that would be pretty cool, but I didn't have.
How old were you at this point?
6.
Man, look at that. All right.
I didn't have money at the time to do that. And so then in 4th grade, I started my first business. I would sell gum, packets of gum to kids at school, and I would chew it in front of them. And I knew that would get them to want it. So I started that business. And then fast forward a few years later, I started selling things from my room on eBay, and then that transitioned into drop shipping. And then a couple of years after that, we moved to Florida, and that's where I'm at now. And I started a website where the local artisans around, like that, if they were making pottery or honey or just things like that, candles, whatever, I would sell them all on my local artisan website and then take a commission from that, because most of them didn't have websites for themselves. And so then that brings us to last year is when you mentioned I wrote my book and was blessed to become a best-selling author. And then I wound up creating a website around that. And I decided that I needed to figure out something to help people with that I could use the lessons that I learned in goal setting, but also another strength that I had, which was building websites, because I built those for myself. Then I worked for the city in managing their website. And so I had those skills and I wanted to marry them together and teach entrepreneurs how to create websites for themselves and how to launch that so that they could get that understanding, because website, especially these days, is fundamental, I believe, for pretty much any business that we have. So that brings me to where we are today.
Right on, man. What a story, because, okay, let me get this right. So at the age of 6, you started looking at different ways that you can make money, right? So you and your family moved to, you said, to Hungary?
Yeah.
And while you're there, you're just looking at the foreign exchange and just looking at how you could have profited if you would have just put $5 in. I don't think at 6 years old, I was thinking like that. At 6 years old, I was like, I hope I can get $3 so I can grab the ice cream truck when it drives by. So that's the only thing that I was thinking about money for. So that's at a pretty young age, you already had an entrepreneurial spirit. And then fast forward to 4th grade, I think the thing that I really picked up on when you talk about this with the selling gum is how you would go and chew it in front of other classmates and stuff to get them to want it. So you already started thinking about marketing, right? Because you're sitting here, hey, look, this is a great product. Check it out. It's delicious, minty and fresh. So like you're already there. So that's awesome, man. And then, so when did you get into drop shipping? Were you still in high school, or was this like, did you do that in college, or when did you
The drop shipping aspect came in college, and I had seen like a course on drop shipping, and then I started experimenting with it until I could make it profitable. And then I got busy again with school, and so that kind of died down. But yeah, it was in college.
Okay, so that gave you like your first taste of doing any type of sales or anything online and with a website. But from there, you wrote a book, right? Were you 23 or 24 when you wrote that book?
I was 24 when I wrote it.
Okay, yeah. And then you built a website around that, right? What's the name of your book?
It's called Goal Setting: Habits to Achieve Your Goals and Succeed in the Life You Want.
Awesome, man. And then you built a website around that, right? And now, did you mention that you also you coach on how to do this?
Yeah, so I've started doing that recently. Like I was building some websites for some people, just like whenever they found that out. But then I started thinking like how I could help more people quicker. And so I put together, it was just one of my friends that I know. He was like, hey, can you build this website for me? And so I was like, I don't have a lot of time like to get all the details that you're wanting, but what if I just video myself doing it and showing you all the details behind it? Because it's not that hard. Like you can, whenever you get like a theme and a content management system and all that, like you can do it yourself, and then you'll be able, because it's a wedding photographer. So I was like, you're going to be wanting to add stuff to it all the time. And so I started that, and then that's how that led into that.
So you mentioned theme. So are you like WordPress based when you're doing this, or?
Yeah,
I've built a couple of websites and WordPress is usually what I use. I've used Wix before too, but WordPress is typically where my comfort level is.
Yeah, I like WordPress, one, because you have unlimited options on the coding and everything, and two, it's open source, so you don't have to pay like a annual fee for having WordPress, unlike Wix. Like you have to pay for the hosting, but you get it a lot cheaper. But besides that, like since I'm helping other people do it, I want it to be as easy for them as possible. And WordPress has, I don't know, it's like 20 or 50 times the amount of plugins and tutorials and everything for if they get stuck, then it's a lot easier for them. And the plugins will do so much for them, just activating it, downloading it. And so just like the ease of use for the people that I teach. So yeah, I usually use WordPress.
Some plugins get a little complicated. I can tell you that on WordPress, but I've got, that's what I use for my website too, for Average Joe Finances, and also my podcast editing site. That's all done on WordPress. And I really, like you said, like the ease of use, but a lot of times there is some like learning curve. So if you don't know what you're doing, it's important to watch some type of tutorial or get somebody that knows what they're doing and learn how to do it. Cause I can tell you, I messed up my site when I first put it together. Like it looked like junk. And then I wound up actually taking a course on how to build it and make it look better. And it's still, it can always be better, right? There's always ways that people can come in and say, hey, you can improve this, or you can make this better. This will make your SEO better and things like that. But I'm pretty happy with where it's at right now. But again, it took me learning how to do that. I couldn't just get up, and a lot of people think that you'll just go to WordPress, build a website and be like, okay, I can just plug and play. You can, but if you don't want your website to look like crap, you got to put some effort into that. Awesome, man. So another thing you talked about is goal setting, and you said you were marrying that together with your ability to build websites, right? So what did you mean by that?
Initially, like whenever I'm talking to somebody, I want to get to know what they're thinking, like what their ideas for their business are and like where they want to go with it, because I don't want to just throw them out in the deep end, kind of like I was like when I was first starting out, because I was like having all these people tell me like, oh, this is the most important thing to focus on. Oh, this is the most important thing to focus on. And I was just like chasing after all these ideas because they're like the experts in those things, supposedly. And they're saying that's what they need or what I need. And so what I mean by that is just like figuring out like what their ideas are so that they can go after only the things that will serve them. Because like whenever I was starting out, it took me a few months just to get my first website up, because I started like hearing all these things about, oh, before you even build that, then you need to do these, you have to do this, you have to do that. And working with them at the beginning of the stage to figure out those goals so that what we do and what we work on will help them reach that, instead of just not knowing when they're there and just going after it.
Yeah, it sounds like the biggest thing is picking what it is that you want to be involved in and what it is that you want to do, and not just trying to go in there and figure it out afterwards. So setting up like we talked about in your introduction before, right? Like finding that niche and nailing that down and attacking that. Because if you're trying to get involved in too many different things, and I've run into this myself personally, trying to get involved in too many different things at once, and then you're wondering why nothing's going and nothing's taken off. And then I realized, hey, I need to like nail down and focus on one thing at a time. But it was a lot getting through this thick skull to be able to get there. That's definitely the way to go about doing it. How would somebody increase their productivity to get this maximum success that you're talking about?
So there's a lot of productivity tips out there, and I've watched countless videos and read countless books on it. And one overlap that I've seen a lot throughout there is a basic principle that you can find, like minimalism is pretty popular now, or a lot of people have heard the Pareto principle, the 80-20 rule, where 80% of your productivity or your success comes from 20% of the things that you do, or like phrases like auditing your business or things like that. So what I do and tell people to do is to take all those ideas, because they're basically saying the same thing. They're saying focus on what is important, what is working, and get rid of the rest. And it's easy to say that, but it's a lot harder to find that. So one of the things that I like to do is to find people who are like 10 years down the road towards where I want to be, which is not hard for me at 25 to find those. And I watch them and I see what I'm doing that they're doing, but most importantly, what I'm doing that they're not doing, and evaluate those things, because they're a lot more successful than I am. They're a lot smarter than I am in those areas. And so just like finding that overlap. And I have like a goal setting journal that I made, and a couple of the places in there, like after 1 month, there's a place to write down things like that worked, write down things that didn't work, and just reflect. And then there's also places each week at the end of each week to do that, because finding the constants that are working will help you find the variables that are not working. And so focusing in on what is working, like honing in on that, giving that 100%, and getting rid of like the things that, and the other things may be working some too. They may be showing you some results, but you only have so much time in the day. And so finding those things that really reap the rewards is what's important to focus on.
Ain't that the truth when you say that you only have so much time in the day, right? I got to tell you, a lot of that is resonating and bringing up some old habits that I was doing in my head here. And I'm thinking about with my podcast alone, how much time I used to spend when I would do these interviews. I would take the recording and then I would go and I would edit it. And then I would edit the videos and make sure everything's good, make sure everything's perfect and this and that. And I would spend like 7 to 8 hours on each episode, at least, trying to make sure that I had it perfect. And then I realized, one, I don't need it to be perfect. And two, why am I spending all my time doing this when I should be more focused on making and creating more content? And that's when I actually brought on an editing team. And I realized that this is stuff that I can start outsourcing, less stuff that I have to do. So not necessarily throwing it away, but outsourcing it to someone else to do. And that has changed everything for me tenfold. One, it's allowed me more time to focus on sharing my podcast out on social media and marketing it and growing it organically versus always being focused on making sure I have a perfect episode and making sure that I edit it the way that I want it to be. And just that simple little thing of being able to outsource something opened up a whole other window of things that I could do. And even it gave me more time too to be with my family. Because I can tell you, I'm still active duty in the Navy. So I spend a lot of time at work and I would come home from work and be like, oh, I got to do some editing today. We'll play a board game later. Sorry, girls. So that was like, okay, man, like you got to bring it in and focus on the things that are important. So that's awesome. And now you said you have a goal setting journal that you yourself personally use right now. So it's cool because I use this thing called a Ninja Planner and it actually has things in there and you go through your week and you go through like the different things that you were able to accomplish, what you weren't able to accomplish, who you need to follow up with and different things like, and you can take that at the end of the week and reflect on what you were able to do, what worked, what didn't work. So I'm using something very similar. I feel better about that because I know that it works and it's working for other people. But the thing is, for me, my biggest thing that I always try to work on getting better at is my time management. Because sometimes I'll get lost in a project and not realize, I'll tell my wife, oh yeah, I'll be down there in a couple minutes. I just want to finish working on this project. And then an hour later, I go downstairs and she's like, yeah, that was some couple minutes. I'm like, oh, it's been an hour. My bad. And that's the other thing is I need to start setting like a timer on myself or something saying, hey, okay, didn't finish. Oh, pick it up another time because you don't want to make like false promises or things like that. All right. Those are some ways, like you said, to increase your productivity and get yourself to that point where you can get this maximum success, right? Now, I'm going backwards here based off of the stuff you wanted to talk about, but the other thing is we talked about in your intro and we touched on a little while ago too, was finding a profitable niche that aligns with your passion. And talking about something like this, I think is super important because a lot of times people will be like, oh, that seems like a good niche to get into to make money. Okay, that's great. But what is your passion? If you're going to do something that you're not enjoying, it's going to get old very fast. So but one of the things I like to say all the time too, if you're working on a project or you're doing something that you enjoy, can you really even call that work? And if it's something that makes you money, that's even better. What are your thoughts on that? Or how would somebody find like that particular niche that aligns with their own passion?
It goes back to what you were saying whenever you're like working on something and then an hour goes by, like the transient hypofrontality or the flow state that we get into. And that, I think that's why I stress finding the intersection, like a Venn diagram of your passion and profits or like somebody's pain points. And it goes back to what I did. I was very obsessive over like goal setting and like how to hone in on that and then how to best figure that out by interviewing a bunch of people more successful than I am and just like reading all the psychological articles. But then whenever I first created my website, like this is another reason that I think people should create their own is because you're able to pivot so easily and you don't have that sunk cost fallacy of paying somebody like $5,000 or whatever to design your website. I was able to start looking. I had a list of things that I believe that I'm good at and things that I enjoy doing, things that whenever I'm learning it, that it just, the time seems to fly by without me noticing it. And I started looking at different Facebook groups and different comments on YouTube channels that I was following. And I I had an idea of what I wanted to do, which was goal setting, because I've always enjoyed like the thrill of reaching that and being more efficient. But that would be a pretty broad niche to have if you just tell people like, hey, I help with goal setting. That won't resonate with anybody really, because that doesn't bring to their mind different pain points that they have in their life. And so that's
sorry. I want to jump in on that, because I see what you're saying, because if somebody, you picture goal setting, you're not going to think about the pain points it takes to get there. You're thinking about goal setting. I set my goals, I achieve my goals. Okay, what's the big deal? Right?
Yeah.
So you're not thinking about all the stuff it takes to succeed in those goals.
Exactly. And so I was thinking about that and realized that. And so once I started getting into Facebook groups that were associated with things that I enjoyed and things that went along with that, I started seeing different things that people were needing. Like I would join different entrepreneurial groups and see like people asking like, oh, what's the best way to create your website? I keep seeing all these Wix commercials on YouTube, the ads on YouTube, and is that the best? And then I started seeing that, and I was like, it took me like a year and a half of testing different hosting services and testing different like themes and testing all that to really figure out which one is the best. And so that's a pain point right there. And I'll be able to help them reach their goals, like their entrepreneurial goals, because websites are so important. So what I'm getting at is like having that list, like having a couple of lists of things, having different questions that you ask yourself, answering those, but being more open to finding pain points in those areas. I didn't know exactly what I was going to be doing whenever I started out. I probably should have before I wrote the book, but it was a learning curve, but I realized that. And I think that knowing like what you enjoy, but also finding those pain points is super important. And actually, it's funny that you brought that up, because another one of my friends asked me how to do that and questions that I asked myself. And so I created a PDF on that on my website. People want to get that.
Yeah, for sure. And definitely I'll make sure we have your website and everything in the show notes. We'll get to that, because I definitely want to talk about that and talk about your book and where people can find it. Yeah, definitely, for sure, man. Okay. So that's super important to make sure that you are doing something that you're passionate about, like you said, because even when you wrote your book, you still hadn't, found that yet. And it takes a lot of courage to even admit that you were sitting here making this book about goal setting and you didn't have it tied to anything yet, but you figured it out. And then scouring social media, you're sitting here and you found the different things that you were interested in, and you're able to go in there and okay, plug into this and figure out how you're going to help some people set their goals specifically in that niche. That's fantastic. I think that kind of ties into something else I wanted to ask you, because it sounds like you do a lot of this through social media, which is fantastic, because I like to do that as well. What do you do to find and attract like your ideal client?
The big way that I've been doing that recently is going on to different podcasts and like writing. Different people have asked me to write articles for their websites, and finding those places where it's your ideal clients are, but it's not a competing service, and going there. And because if you find those like huge groups of people who are already needing that service, then that takes care of a lot of the marketing itself, because you're able to provide a lot of good value for people. That's where I try to start out with, is like providing value, providing different lessons and tips for people, because if you don't do that, then why would they ever buy anything from you? Like, why would they trust you? Because you just would come off as like a sleazy salesman,
like a salesy person.
Yeah, exactly. And so
that's definitely not the way to come off to people. It needs to be genuine. But like, I've bought products and services from people online, freelancers, friends of mine, and things like that. And it was never because they came at me with a sales pitch. It's because they came at me with a, hey, we have a personal relationship and I really think that this can help you. And I'm like, you know what? I think it might be able to help me. Let's try it out. So things like that. I think it's important to build that relationship and build that network, not just come off and say, hey, if you sign up today, I can get you this and that. And then for a few dollars more, I'll throw this in. So it's definitely good to build that rapport with people and not just be straight off the bat, hitting them up in their DMs. Hey, I got a business opportunity for you. Every time somebody shoots me a DM and it says, I have a business opportunity for you, I automatically ignore them. Like right off the bat, I'm like, okay, this is probably some MLM or something. You know what I'm saying? So just, nope, no thanks. We talked a lot about like the things that you've done to get to where you're at today, including to the point of where you wrote a book and now you're able to coach people on like their goal setting. But I want to know a little bit more about you. Like we talked about you at a very young age, what you were trying to do when you were 6 years old, but when did you first know that you yourself wanted to become an entrepreneur and become like your own boss?
It was around 6, to be honest with you, because
when you found the widget.
Yeah, because I was like, man, there's good opportunity there. And also we would travel a lot to the Czech Republic, and I had a good friend there, and he was probably in his late 30s and he was an entrepreneur, and I would listen to him and my dad talk a lot and just like hearing those things, and you're able to express your creativity and you're also able to help a lot of people and impact people's lives. And just like hearing that, I was like, man, that sounds like a good job. And so ever since then, like I knew in the back of my head, that's what I wanted to do. I didn't know how exactly I would get there. Like I tried different things and tried like different routes to begin with. And none of them, there's absolutely nothing wrong with any of the ways that I was doing it, drop shipping or just like having basically a small version of Amazon for local artisans. But what I've found that I like the most is like being able to see directly who I'm impacting. And so that's how that idea came around, where I could show people exactly like how to do it and how to cut hours off their time and save a lot of money. And so like just seeing those lives impacted, that's how I knew that's what I wanted to do.
Yeah, that's phenomenal. You know what I really like though, and I know you said that your favorite thing right now is what you're doing with being able to see how you help other people, but I really like the whole artisan website where you were helping like local artists and stuff and people that have products sell their stuff on your website and you would get a commission off that. But I just thought that was super awesome because a lot of times people like to buy like that handcrafted or just very personalized items and gifts and things. That's why Etsy became so popular. But you were able to build a website specific to that area. I just thought that was really neat, man. So I want to talk about some different ways of how you got here. And I think one of them is by using SMART goals, right? So specific, measurable, attainable, realistic, and timely. And I want to talk about that because I want to ask you, does that really work when you focus on it that way?
I've gone back and forth on it like over the past few months since I like started getting into it. But I think a lot of those principles are real, like are applicable to everybody. Like it has to be specific. Like you have to, for one, you have to know like what you want to get, because I don't agree with a lot of the things like with the Think and Grow Rich. Like I agree with the premise of it. Whenever I first read it, like by Napoleon Hill, I was like, that's kind of woo-woo. But then I started learning about the reticular activating system, to where feed the information into your brain, like what you want to see. And then that's when like you start seeing more opportunities. And that's when you start seeing like doors opening. Because if you just got a new car, then you start seeing that car everywhere. It's because your conscious mind like bought the car, and then your subconscious mind is like seeing that everywhere and telling you that, oh, there's your car. And so like it opens those opportunities for you. So being specific is important. And then measurable, like you need to be able to know, like I was talking about, like with the constants and variables, you need to be able to know what's working and to what extent it's working. And then the attainable, realistic, those I try setting like really big goals sometimes, just like to pull myself through. It works like a magnet for me. I feel like just because we're going to go through inevitable obstacles, but like with that thing in mind, like if the feelings that are attributed to that, because a lot of the times like the goals that we set are because of a feeling that we want. If you want to have a bunch of passive income, like you want that freedom that comes with it, you want the happiness that comes with like not having to work all the time and be with your family.
It's not just the having all that money rolling in, it's the side benefit of what happens when you have that money rolling in. Like you said, that freedom that you get is you being able to spend that time with your family and not always be focused on more and more.
Yeah. The realistic one is really the only one that I go back and forth on, just because like I don't know how important it is to set a realistic goal, because a lot of people set a goal and then they get there and then they're not happy because they're in search of this for so long that they're like, okay, what's next? So like in my mind, and like what I've told other people is like setting kind of incremental goals along the path to a big goal, and just like rewarding yourself a little bit there, here and there, just like to keep you going. But also just because like you need to enjoy the process. Like you need to enjoy like what you're doing on a day-to-day basis, or then what's the point of just one day getting there if you ever do get there? Because like one of the things, like being on podcasts is a good way for me to get exposure to people, but I really enjoy like talking to new people and getting to meet new people and hear their stories and hear their ideas and everything. So I love that part of the process. And that's one of the things to get me to like a larger goal to impact more people. But just like so I don't see the need for it to be realistic if you set goals and go along the journey the right way. Then the last one is the time constraint. For me, that's super important. And that's another reason that I set the mini goals, because like back in school, I would like cram the night before a huge paper is due because I knew that was the deadline. But then I started setting like kind of incremental goals. Like, okay, even if it was like a 5,000 page paper, I would set a couple of different ones. Okay, I have a 1,200 page paper due today. Like I would break it up into different segments so that I wouldn't be super overwhelmed that day in case something else came up. And so just like having those time constraints helps you go along the journey.
Yeah, and you have to set time limits, right? Like I was explaining before with me, where I was like, oh yeah, it'll take a couple minutes to work on this project. And then an hour later, it's like, it's important to set that time to know how long something's going to take. But I think part of that, I like what you're talking about, like with the realistic part of your goal setting, because sometimes if you're sitting here, you're setting goals that are realistic. What's the word before that? It's attainable. So while something might seem unrealistic to you, it's still attainable. There's always a way to get there. It's just a matter of whether or not you can accomplish it, is whether or not it'll be realistic or not. Setting an unrealistic goal, I don't think there's such thing, really. There's no such thing as an unrealistic goal, unless like your goal is to become like a superhero that can fly or anything like that. But who knows, if you were a scientist and that was like your life's work, who knows, you might be able to get there. I don't know. But what I'm talking about is like more of like a, hey, I want to be a millionaire by the age of, 25 or something like that. It's not an unrealistic goal. It's definitely something that's difficult, but it's manageable to get there. It's attainable. And that's what's important. That I think that out of all those acronyms in there, or all the words in that acronym, the most important one is that middle word, and that's attainable. Everything else, you can work on that after the fact. The goal has to be attainable. But at the same time, just because it's attainable doesn't mean it should be super easy. It should be a goal that challenges you. You don't want to just be like, my goal is to get up today and eat breakfast. Okay, good on you, bro. You got to set goals that will actually challenge you and get the brain juices flowing and get you thinking and doing things like that. Because that's where all the rest of it's going to come in anyway. Because now you realize you got to be specific. You got to niche it down, right? So you got to be specific. And then the whole thing about it being measurable is that measure like your progress, be able to determine whether or not you're going to be able to accomplish the goal. And that kind of leads right into it being attainable. So it all ties into each other. So I really like that, man. Okay. Now, we just stayed away from this for a little bit, but I want to ask you because the podcast is called Average Joe Finances. So I wanted to ask you about, with all this stuff that you're doing, you've got your businesses that you're building. And I really like the fact that I'm talking to someone that's building businesses right now. You're not at your peak. You're building up. And I really love that. So what are you doing right now on your journey yourself into financial freedom?
So a lot of that is just having the openness to like do different side gigs, like doing websites for people along the journey, or doing like videography for different people, and just like saying, yeah, I can do that for you. And just like having those skills that will serve me in the long run for the jobs that I'm going to be doing, like the business that I am doing, because all those things like tie in, and just like sharpening those, but making money at the same time. And I haven't really gotten into the investing a whole lot. I do some, just like in some blue chips and just like the mutual funds, whatever. But I haven't really devoted a lot of time and energy into that.
And there's nothing wrong with that. You're still building. You said that you're investing in blue chips and mutual funds. So you're investing in a way you're going to get some gains, and it's a little safer while you're still building your business.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I think there's different times for different people to invest in different strategies like that.
All right, man. That's awesome. And so from a very young age, you kind of knew that you were going to be, you're going to be like your own businessman. You're going to be your own boss. You stayed focused on that this entire time, to the fact that now at 25, you're a best-selling author. You've got a couple different businesses that you've built and that you're building. So it's really awesome, man. The skill sets that you've also acquired while you were doing this, like to be able to help people build their websites with videography and things like that. It's definitely skill sets that you can monetize, and you can use that. And what I really like is that you said you're doing like these little side gigs, these side hustles, because that's super important. A lot of times you have your typical investor who has like their 9-to-5 job and everything, and they just stay focused on that, and they take a little bit of their money, they put it into whatever they're investing in. And then that's like the typical, those put in their 401k and things like that. But then you've got the folks that are doing that, but they're also like working some jobs on the side, and they're taking that money and investing in other things. Like the money I make from my businesses all go right back into my business, because I'm currently at the point where I'm building and building and building. So when I retire from the Navy, then I'll start taking profits. You know what I'm saying? Then I'll start paying myself. But right now, I just want to continue to build and build and build, because I don't need it right now. I don't need that extra income. And then when I retire from the Navy, I can be financially free and go enjoy myself at a young age. I can retire next year at 38 if I wanted to. It's just a matter of preference and how you set your goals to get there. So don't downplay what you're doing. Don't downplay that you just got started investing and you're just starting to do that. Don't downplay that at all, because with your mindset and with the things that you're currently doing, I guarantee you by the time you're my age, you will be a millionaire or probably a multimillionaire. I'm 37 right now, so you got 12 years to get there. Easily done. You'll probably be there by 30 at the rate that you're going. Keep those goals, keep them realistic but attainable. But dude, I really love what you're doing. It's fantastic. So now I got to ask you probably the most important question of all, and we touched on it a little bit, right? And that is, where can people find more information about you? If you could please share your website, any social media that people can follow you on. Where can we find your book? This is the stuff we need to know.
So all of that can be found just like on my website, which is reachfuel, FUEL, potential.com. And then if they're wanting to get that PDF that I mentioned, it's just the website URL and then /niche, if that'll benefit anybody.
That keeps it simple, all in one spot. So we'll definitely make sure we get your website in the show notes and a link to the PDF, everything. And where can people buy your book?
It's on Amazon. They can just, The easiest way to do it is just search my name or go to my website. I have a link right there. It says my book.
All right, fantastic. So go to his website, click my book, or just type in Nathan Bynum on Amazon and it'll pop up. Nathan, hey man, you're one of the younger people I've had on the show, but I got to tell you, this was a fantastic interview. You are really setting the standard high for somebody at a young age to go out there, set their goals and attain them. So I just want to say I'm proud of you for what you're doing. I think it's really awesome that you're focused on providing a service to other people, and you're already at the point at the age of 25 where you're trying to give back. And I think that's super commendable. I just want to say thank you again so much for coming on the show and talking with me today.
It was a pleasure. Thank you for having me. Enjoyed our conversation.
Absolutely. And aloha from Hawaii.